Hi everyone, Barker here. Welcome to my YouTube channel where we do all sorts of crafts but mainly focus on crochet. Sorry, I just noticed that the dragon and the lion seem to be kissing in the background. Anyway, right, today's video, I am going back into the jar. So, the jar, let me explain. Jar is filled with ideas for new little series for the channel, for one-off projects, for things that my children want doing for them, and also things that my husband wants doing as well. So I'm going to go into the jar and go with the idea that's in there. Make things out of /fix poly blankets. Here are the blankets. They're all like fleecy blankets, but they've all got holes in them. Now, these holes have all been caused by this creature here. Now, this is a very rare wingless four-legged moth. I know it looks like a rabbit, but it's not. It must be a moth. What she'd do is when these were drying is she would nibble them. So now I have countless blankets with holes in them. So I'm going to take these two which are the same and I'm going to put them into squares, and then I'm thinking I'm going to use some fluffy yarn to like crochet a border around the squares and then join them up, I think. Right, then I get out a cutting board. So along with my cutting board, I needed something to actually cut around, and I decided to use this biscuit tin lid. I'm using a rotary cutter to try and get my lines as straight as possible, and I soon realised this was going to be easier said than done. My method wasn't really working, but it's the only real method I've got. I don't have a lot of things when it comes to like sewing because it's not something I do all that often. But as I say, it's the only method I had, and with a few ideas forming on what I was actually going to do with these squares, once they were all cut up, I decided just to carry on and cut them all. And I got about 30 plus squares in the end. And then when all of the pieces were cut into fairly unperfect squarish shapes, I wondered if I could actually do something with the sewing machine to actually improve them, because I think at this point I was definitely edging towards a blanket rather than anything else. I think that was the idea that I was sticking with. I have to admit, it did take about 3 bobbins worth of thread to do all of these squares in the end. I think a lot of that was down to the fact that I used a zigzag stitch. So the first thing I decided to do with the squares was to just simply hem them, but I didn't really like this, and there was definitely going to be a front and a back if I did that as well to the blanket. So next I tried just using the thread to edge the squares with the idea to then try and cut them straighter with a zigzag pair of scissors that would help combat fray. And this just didn't look right either, and I realised it was because it kind of looked too thin. So I thought, oh, why don't I just double up the squares? I'll put them front sides together, stitch around them, and bag them out. So it's kind of like a faux quilt at this point. And yes, this point is definitely like going to be a blanket, and that's what I stuck with. This will turn out to be a blanket because as I'm filming this voiceover here, I'm still only about midway through. So at this point, I decided I really needed to see the finished-ish square. So I just did the one. I just stitched around and did one square, and then I crocheted around one square just to get a proper feel of how it looked. So this fluffy yarn actually turned out to be quite thin, and I didn't really like the look of it working with a 4mm hook, so I doubled it and went to a 5mm hook. I did try a 6 at first, but it just simply didn't work. The 6 was just a bit too big. To actually be able to work the crochet stitches through the fabric, I used a scalpel to make holes. And this was a little tricky in places to actually crochet through because I'm trying to like blindly find the hole in the back piece of fabric. So it's kind of like a little game of where's the hole. If you follow me on TikTok, that would make more sense as well. The holes I made were about a 1/2 inch from each other. And then it was just a case of crocheting around. The first round was one double crochet. This is UK terms, by the way. So that would be one single crochet US terms. So it's one double crochet, chain one, and that's repeated all the way around. But on the corners, I put an additional 3 chains just to widen the gap. The second round, whatever, I did play around with a few different stitches and settled on a treble stitch. So that's a double stitch if you're US terms. So along the edges, I repeated the pattern, one treble, chain one. And on the corners, I did 2 treble, chain 4, 2 treble. So remember, if you're US terms and you want to have a go at that yourself, when I say double, you're doing single. When I say treble, you're doing double. Why have these terms gone different when they've gone over to the US? I have absolutely no idea. Right, so very happy with how this square was looking. So it was just a case of getting back to the sewing machine, sewing the rest of the squares, and then crocheting around them. But I ran out of yarn. So one ball of this fluffy yarn, this it's more like a it actually does feel very similar to the fleece of the blankets. I'm wondering if it is some sort of fleece blend. I'll have to actually check on the label for that. So one 100-gram ball doubled up has managed to go around 5 of the squares, and that leaves me with a further 10 squares. So I'm going to get an additional 3 balls of yarn because I am also wanting to do a few additional rows of crochet between the squares, not just to join them up. I think it does need a few more rows just to make it a little wider, because I'm thinking at this point maybe have the blanket 3 squares wide and then going 5 squares down, I think. But I'll have a play with that once they're all done. Turns out I didn't like the 3x5 So I've played around for a little bit, a few different designs, and then I settled on having 6 squares in the middle of the blanket, and then a row of 4 on top and a row of 4 on the bottom. Go. Got 6 in the middle there. First thing I did is I joined the 2 center rows together. I did this using an extended treble stitch, so that's an extended double stitch if you're US terms. And once they were together, I focused on making sure that these 3 across had enough extra rounds on them to take them to the width of the 4 rows. So very well on this. I'll make sure there's pictures up at the end. So basically, here we go. There's a row of 4, and you can see a row of 3 here. It was extended with rounds going completely around it to make it the same width as this. Now these rounds were built using the same pattern I used for the second round of each square's border. So that means I was doing a triple stitch, chain 1, and on the corners doing 2 trebles, chain 4, 2 trebles again. How many did I actually do? I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I did 5. And then it was a case of, again, using the extended treble stitch to join the rows of 4 to the top and the bottom of the blanket. But I also gave them an extra row along the top and the bottom as well, before finishing with a border of full double crochet stitches. And this is where I lost yarn chicken. Find the end. Luckily, I did have some more fluffy yarn left, but unfortunately it is not white, it's cream. There are about 10 stitches there that are in that, but you have to know where it is to find it, so I'm not too concerned about that. I know originally I said that I thought I was going to need an additional 3 balls of yarn to finish this off. No. I needed an additional 5. Yeah. To start off with a 100 gram ball. And in the end, I've used, well, just over 600 grams to do this. And here we go. Here's the finished blanket. Here's some aerial pictures and the final dimensions. You did see at the beginning of the video that I had more of these blankets to mend as well. I'm not going to make a series out of it or anything like that. I'm basically going to do the exact same thing that I've done here. And I have this lovely blanket.
Give it to us! Yeah, we have a blanket!
Or I guess when I make the second one, I'll have a blanket.
Bye, you two. We all got the blanket!
Yeah!